Most advice about procrastination focuses on discipline. Work harder, try harder, just start. But if discipline were the real problem, procrastination wouldn't affect people who care deeply about their work. And yet those are often the people who struggle with it the most. The people who want to perform well, the people who feel pressure to do things properly, the people who sit down to start something important and suddenly feel resistance. So in this video, I want to show you 5 proven methods to prevent procrastination, not productivity tricks, not motivational slogans, but methods that work with your brain instead of against it. And the 5th method is the one that explains why many productivity systems completely fail, because once you understand that one, procrastination starts to make a lot more sense. The first method is what I call the micro-mission method. Most procrastination begins before the work even starts. It begins in the moment your brain evaluates the task. If the task looks large, uncertain, or complex, your nervous system becomes cautious. Your brain starts asking, how long will this take? What if I get stuck? What if I don't do it well? And suddenly starting feels heavy. The micro-mission method solves this by shrinking the entry point. Instead of asking, how do I complete this project? You ask, what is the smallest useful interaction with this work I can make? Not finishing the report, just opening the document. Not solving the whole problem, just writing the first sentence. This changes the psychological equation because your brain doesn't resist effort. It resists uncertainty and perceived risk. Once the task feels safe enough to begin, resistance drops dramatically, and often something surprising happens. Once you start, momentum appears naturally. The second method addresses one of the biggest hidden drivers of procrastination: open loops. An open loop is any unfinished problem your brain is trying to remember. An email you haven't replied to, maybe a decision you haven't made, or a task you haven't started. Each one takes up a small amount of mental space. 1 or 2 don't really matter, but when you accumulate dozens, your brain becomes overloaded. This is called cognitive load. And when cognitive load increases, clarity disappears. Your brain struggles to prioritize because it's trying to track too many unresolved things at once. So one of the most powerful methods to prevent procrastination is surprisingly simple. Get things out of your head. Write everything down. Tasks, decisions, worries, ideas. When the brain stops trying to remember everything, it suddenly has space to think again. I've done a full video on the hidden cost of open loops and how they create overwhelm, which I'll link up here and in the description. The third method is a question. Whenever you feel resistance toward a task, ask what feels heavy about starting this. This question is powerful because procrastination always has a reason. Often the task contains something like uncertainty or fear of judgment or too many steps or unclear expectations. When you identify the source of the heaviness, you can change the task. Maybe the next step becomes clearer. Maybe the scope becomes smaller. Maybe the expectations become more realistic. But until you identify what's creating pressure, the brain will keep resisting because procrastination isn't random. It's information. The fourth method is counterintuitive. Most people try to start work while already overwhelmed, but the brain struggles to engage when cognitive load is high. Imagine trying to solve a difficult problem while 10 other problems are competing for your attention. That's the situation many people face every day. So instead of forcing focus, start by reducing load. Clear your task list. Decide what matters today. Remove unnecessary decisions. Simplify the next step. When cognitive load drops, the brain becomes capable of engagement again. This is why sometimes the most productive thing you can do is clarify the work before you attempt it. The fifth method is the most important one, and it explains why many productivity systems fail, because procrastination often isn't about discipline, it's about pressure. Your nervous system constantly evaluates whether something feels safe enough to engage with. When pressure is high, deadlines, expectations, uncertainty, the brain becomes cautious. It begins protecting you from potential failure. That protection can look like avoidance, delay, or sudden difficulty in starting. So one of the most powerful ways to prevent procrastination is to reduce the pressure signals around the work, lower the expectations, allow imperfect progress, focus on movement instead of outcome. When the brain perceives the task as safe enough, engagement returns naturally. If you want to understand why the nervous system sometimes resists important work, I've explained that in another video, which I'll link up here and in the description. If you step back and look at these 5 methods together, they all do something similar. They reduce pressure. they reduce cognitive load, they create safer entry points into work, and that's the real shift. Instead of asking, how do I force myself to work, you start asking, how do I make this task easier for my brain to engage with? That change alone solves a surprising amount of procrastination. So look, procrastination isn't usually a character flaw. It's a signal that something about the task feels heavy, uncertain, or risky. Once you learn to interpret that signal, you can adjust the task, and when the task changes, the behavior often changes with it. If this video helped you understand how to prevent procrastination, the next video I recommend watching is Why Your Nervous System Resists Important Work. That video explains the deeper psychology behind why resistance appears in the first place. I've linked it on the screen now. You can also explore the full procrastination psychology playlist where I break down why procrastination happens and how to work with your brain instead of against it. And if you want more videos like this explaining productivity through psychology rather than pressure, consider subscribing to the channel, because on this channel we're not trying to force productivity, we're trying to understand how the brain actually works, and once you understand that, momentum becomes much easier to build.